How's it going, everybody? This is Mike. Welcome back to my channel. I'd like to get back into a series that I got away from 4 years ago. This is a film for each year of my life. And I actually started this, I don't know, several years ago because my life began in 1951 and I got up to the year 1967. And for some reason I stopped. I guess life got in the way. I don't know. But the reason I'm getting back to it now is because my good friend Rob of Rob's Movie Collection has also decided to get back into this. We were doing this alongside of each other back 4 years ago, and he stopped as well. I don't know what happened, but maybe we just got tired. I don't know. Uh, but now Rob is jumping back into the series again, so I said, well, let me tag along. Let me play along with you. So I will put a link to Rob's channel below so you can check out what he's doing. If you don't know Rob of Rob's Movie Collection, you really should, because he's one of my favorite YouTubers. Great speaking voice, great editor. His videos are always very creative and very interesting visually, and he has a lot of good information as well. So if you want to see some good YouTube action, check out Rob. All right. So when I last saw you for this series, I did a film called The Trip, Roger Corman, 1967, starring Peter Fonda, Susan Strasberg, Dennis Hopper, and Bruce Dern. It was all about a guy played by Peter Fonda taking an acid trip. That's pretty much the whole story. Very visually exciting, lots of good music, very creative. And I'd like to continue the other half of this double bill with a film called Psych-Out from 1968. This film was directed by Richard Rush, and it stars Susan Strasberg, Dean Stockwell, Jack Nicholson, and Bruce Dern. Now, Dean Stockwell actually has a very small supporting role in the film, but he's billed over Jack Nicholson because Jack Nicholson at this time, hard to believe now maybe, but he was still doing his very long apprenticeship in low-budget films, supporting roles. He started working back in 1958 and worked with Roger Corman, was in films like The Terror and The Raven, and so he was still trying to make a name for himself. But he really is the male lead of this film, and he does a very good job. Plays a guy named Stoney, who happens to be the leader of a psychedelic rock band called Mumblin' Jim. And he and his bandmates and a whole bunch of other people are living the classic hippie lifestyle in this big Victorian mansion in Haight-Ashbury. So it's all free love, it's all drugs, music, irresponsibility, everything you think about the hippie lifestyle. So Susan Strasberg shows up in the Haight-Ashbury. She's a young 17-year-old runaway, and her name is Jenny Davis, and she's come to Haight-Ashbury to look for her brother, Steve Davis, played by Bruce Dern, and he is also known on the streets as the Seeker. He's kind of a street preacher. He's an artist, sculptor, long shaggy hair, crazy on drugs, and just a very well-known character in Haight-Ashbury. So she's looking for him. Now Jenny happens to be deaf. She's not mute. She speaks very well, but she has to read lips. And we find out later that her deafness was the result of something very traumatic that happened to her in her childhood. She was abused by her mother, which is also the main reason why she ran away from home. And so that's what's going on in the story. We have the drama of Stoney and Jenny slowly falling in love, him trying not to fall in love because he doesn't want to be tied down, and she just adores him. And we also have the band trying to make it and get some good publicity and make some money. And we also have the drama of the Seeker, who is being pursued by a gang of thugs who don't like what he's been preaching. He's like a street preacher, and whatever he's been saying has been pissing off the wrong group of non-hippie guys who just want to hurt him. And we also have the police looking for Jenny because she's only 17 years old. So we have, and then of course there are incidents of drug overdoses. So that brings a lot of drama into the story. The uh, the film is a very balanced look at the the crazy lifestyle of the 1960s in Haight-Ashbury. The film was produced by Dick Clark, who, of course, well known as the founder of American Bandstand, the MC. He was an actor. He was a producer, very much concerned about youth culture, and not just as a way to use that to make money for himself, but he also cared very much about what was going on with the youth culture, the subculture of that time, and was concerned about kids getting pulled into this and being hurt. So he wanted this film to be something a little bit different, not just exploitational, but to show the dark side of that lifestyle as well. The drugs, the runaway situation, people being caught up in exploitation, sexual exploitation, living in unsanitary conditions in some of these communes. And so he really wanted to do something that was very responsible. The cinematography was by Laszlo Kovacs, who also came up as an apprentice in low-budget films during the 1960s. He had worked with Roger Corman, he worked with Ray Dennis Steckler, and brought a lot of very advanced creative ideas to this movie. And Richard Rush, the director, he his first film was all the way back in 1960, which also featured a supporting performance by Jack Nicholson. This teen angst classic called Too Soon to Love. So Richard Rush himself kind of came up as an apprentice doing low-budget films. He began sort of an uneasy relationship with American International Pictures in 1967 with this movie Thunder Alley, which is one of my favorites, and Funicello and Fabian in a race car drama, which actually is not a bad little film. And he also made a couple of biker films. He did, let's see, Hell's Angels on Wheels. He did The Savage Seven. And a couple of years down the road, he did another very good countercultural film called Getting Straight with Elliot Gould. And he's probably mostly well known for a 1980 film called The Stuntman. Okay? Now, some of the music in this film, you get to hear music by two of the famous rock groups of the time, The Seeds and the Strawberry Alarm Clock, both who perform in the film. And we also get to hear the #1 song by the Strawberry Alarm Clock. It was called Incense and Peppermints, which they don't play in the film, but you hear it on the soundtrack. For some reason, they don't play the entire song on the soundtrack. They just play part of it. I have no idea why they would do that. But so some of the other people who were in the film, we have actors, some of the people who showed up in other AIP films at the time: Max Julien, Adam Rourke, Henry Jaglin, who of course became a very well-known director, Linda Gay Scott, Ken Scott, Gary Marshall, who happens to be, well, he was the brother of Penny Marshall, jack of all trades in the entertainment business back then as a writer, director, actor, MC, very well-known name. John Cardos, who was a kind of a cult name that a lot of people might recognize. He was a stuntman, actor, and Gary Kent, who just died this year. Gary Kent is another kind of a well-known name as a stuntman, director, actor, whom a lot of you may have heard of. The interesting thing about the drug situation in this story, in the trip, the cool drug was LSD, right? In Psych-Out, the drug is something called STP, if anybody remembers that. STP was actually another form of amphetamine, and the chemical name is DOM, I think, DOM or something like that. But STP is a name that was given to the drug by the hippie culture in Haight-Ashbury, and it stands for serenity, tranquility, and peace. But it delivers anything but, as you will see in this movie. So, yeah. Anyway, I think that's pretty much all I want to say. So, the film was originally called The Love Children, and I guess some of the executives or distributors were worried that people might think it was about illegitimate children, love children as we called them back then. So Samuel Z. Arkoff, who was the one of the CEOs of AIP, came up. He had a perfect talent for picking cool titles, and he just picked Psych-Out as an imitation of the film Psycho, which at that time had been revived in theaters and was getting a lot of attention again. So he just, okay, we'll call it Psych-Out. Now there's an extra feature on this disc, which features sort of a making of the film. It has Richard Rush, it has Laszlo Kovacs, Dick Clark, and Bruce Dern. Now Bruce Dern was talking about how he didn't remember that much about making this film because his part was very small. He was only there for about 2 days. But he did say that he was very concerned at the time because he was worried about his friends who were getting carried away by their drug use. And he said that a lot of people that he had known, he was working with, used to be 100%, now they were like 90%. And it was beginning to bother him. And as opposed to his crazy screen image, Bruce Dern is actually someone who never drank, never smoked, and never used drugs. So he was very sincere in his concern about what was going on. I guess that's pretty much all I want to say. I like this movie very much, and I give it a very high recommendation. If you're interested in that time and that sort of atmosphere, or if you just want to have a good time with a very seriously conceived and very well written film, well acted, try Psych-Out. Okay, I'll be back hopefully next week. Maybe I'll do one of these videos every week, and next step will be the year 1969, the year I turned 18. Wow. Okay, comments are welcome, folks.